Nathan Cox, thanks for joining us around the home. Today I'm going to show you guys how to install laminate flooring in your home. And before you guys get like too far along, you'll notice on the timeline there are chapters built in. So I always got people complain, oh, your video's too long, you give too much information. People are like, you give not enough. So I'm going to give like tons of information, but it's going to be broken up and you can jump around, you can skip parts, you can go back to parts review. It's a really awesome newer feature that YouTube offers, okay? Now, this video will be good for just about any laminate floor because they all basically work the same, but specifically, all right, I've got the Select Surfaces collection here. It can be found at Sam's Club. I do believe they're kind of like exclusive with Sam's. I've been carrying it for years, and they still carry it now. Obviously because we just got this flooring here for here. A couple of things I really like about this floor. I'll just go over it real quick before we jump in and start doing this. Is one, it's super crazy thick. So it feels and sounds more like real wood versus like that really thin stuff that sounds like clanky plastic. It has a foam barrier built into the bottom side already, okay? It's made in Germany, not China or some other country that doesn't have any EPA laws or anything like that. And one amazing thing about this flooring is it's under $2 a square foot. It comes up, it's up a little bit from years ago when I made my first video about this. I think it still came out to like $1.85 or $1.87 a square foot. Crazy, okay? Especially when you see this up close to how good this looks. Okay, let's briefly go over some of the tools you're gonna need. Starting off with things like a carpenter's pencil, a tape measure, a skill saw, a table saw, a chainsaw, WD-40, liquid wrench, a log splitter, a splitting maul, hammers, knee pads, eyeglasses. Wait, guys, I'm kidding, that's way too much crazy stuff. Okay, seriously though, tape measure, carpenter's pencil, and you're gonna need some saws, okay? We're gonna need, it's really nice to have a table saw and a miter saw to do this. So if you have those two saws, you're golden. And also, this room doesn't happen to have any register vents. It's got wall heater, but with register vents, using a drill to drill out the four corners of the register vent, and either a jigsaw or a sawzall make register vents really, really good for cutting out. Okay, but this can still be done with a jigsaw slash sawzall if you have register vents, and a skill saw. So I will get later in the video. I'll show you how different ways you can cut it with the different tools. So not everyone has to run out and buy a table saw for this one job. Okay. I will have Amazon links in the description down below. Most of all the tools and equipment that we're using in this video. And of course, we're not going to forget our protective gear like gloves, safety glasses, earplugs, knee pads, things like that. Let's move on to the next step. Okay, before we get started, well, we got to know how much flooring we need, right? So you're just going to measure your room out. And round up a little bit. So that was like 12 foot, like 9 inches. So I just figured 13. And it looks like this room is pretty square. So basically 13 by 13. You're gonna multiply that out to get your square footage. It's really simple as that. Don't forget to measure like closets or entryways or anything else like that if you have them. Add that up, and it's always nice to add, depending on how much you round it up. If you get your measurements exact, then you wanna round up by about another 10% for waste. The things we're going to cut off. We're going to cut off at the ends. We're going to cut off, when we finish, and that's all waste. And you got to figure that, or you're going to run short of materials. So it doesn't hurt to grab an extra case while you're there, wherever you get it from, and then just return the unopened cases when you're done. All right, the next step is to bring your flooring into your house and then acclimate it. Okay, when we acclimate it, that sounds weird. Okay, you want to adjust to the humidity and the temperature of the house. So you actually want to sit it up here in a stack, and the more loose you can stack it, the better. We're kind of tight in here, so it is what it is. So like 4 days, maybe 5, so that they can acclimate. Now, if you're like, wait a second, I don't have an extra 4 or 5 days, I need to get the project done faster. Well, if you want to get it done faster, open up all the boxes. Okay, get rid of all save a couple, set to the side in case they're extra cases you can take back later. But open up, the cases, get them out of the plastic, and then you can set them up in a more open area, and you can cut that time in half. Okay, now let's get started. This is the prep part of the video. We got to make sure that the room is prepped and ready for the new flooring. So one of the first things you may be doing is taking off the baseboard. Some of you might be like, do I have to take off the baseboard? Is it okay if I don't? Well, let's talk about that real quick, okay? Now, it's best, you know, if you have a newer home, just to take the baseboard off. And when you do so, take yourself a utility knife and cut along where the baseboard meets the wall. You're gonna cut out any paint or caulking that's holding the two together so you don't just tear the wall up when you take it off. And one additional pro tip, if you are taking your baseboards off, number them as you take them off. Put a number on the wall and the corresponding number on the baseboard. Even in a simple room, it can be a mess when you put it on later because some of the walls can be almost the same, and then you try to put them back together and it's just not fitting right. Okay, save yourself a lot of trouble, number them. And when you go to take them off, use actual proper trim crowbars, okay? Not your big flat bars you use to separate 2x4s with. You're gonna destroy the wall. And you can also, if you wanna be really careful with the wall, get yourself a drywall putty knife, you know, a metal one, whether it's 6-inch or 8-inch, whatever. Stick that against the wall first, and then, you know, put your pry bar right up against that and carefully work it. That way you have a little bit more shielding against, you know, to the wall, so you don't, like, hopefully you don't dent it, because that always sucks. But back to the baseboard. Some of you will be like, well, my baseboard's really fancy and I'm worried about cracking it when I take it off. That can be a real concern. Or this house here that I'm working on is very old. I mean, like, not 100% sure, but I think it's pushing 80, 90 years old. And the walls are lab and plaster, and I do not want to take this baseboard off because the walls will probably crack in the process, okay? I'll be doing more harm than good. So what I'm going to be doing is we're going to take up the old flooring, which well, that's the next step. But then when we put the flooring back in, we're just going to take the flooring up to the baseboard like it was the wall, and then we're going to add a quarter round around the base. Okay, so that is the second option. So you don't have to take it off, but if you don't, you're going to have to add something above it to fill in the gap. Okay, that's just it. Now, if you guys see me, like, you know, in different parts of this video showing up, and I'm like, looks like you're spilling stuff on you, it's actually raining pretty good outside. So sometimes I'm running back and forth to my truck, and so, you know, it may look like I get wet in between here. There's a reason for that. All right, now let's remove this carpet, okay? Now, if you have other types of flooring, now laminates can go over, like, if you had like a vinyl floor here, and the vinyl wasn't curling up, you could put this, you know, this laminate right over that. If it is starting to curl up in a couple, maybe just on the very edge in a couple spots, but feels pretty good, you can cut off that curl with a utility knife and start laying. But anyways, most people probably will have carpet where this is going, and I'm gonna show you guys how to cut this out. Okay, for some of you that might be wondering, no, I don't wear safety gear just to wear safety gear, you know, 24/7 on all my videos. I'm putting the glasses on now because as you start to pull the carpet up and cut it, there will be parts of the old back and stuff like that that will pop up and fling at you. And you don't want that old, nasty, crusty stuff in your eyes, okay? Now where I'm starting here is in a doorway. This room behind me has the same carpet, but it's gonna keep the carpet. We're only installing the laminate in the front room here. Okay, so the laminate's gonna come right up here into the doorway. I haven't decided exactly how it's gonna land yet. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna leave as much carpet here in the doorway as possible. So we're just gonna cut it straight across, right here, you know, in front of the room. Just to get yourself a clean blade, utility knife, and cut her up. Okay, you can see with a clean utility blade, it's not really that hard to cut carpet. You just have to pay attention to where you're cutting. Now, to keep this as a more manageable waste, something that you might even be able to stick out with your own trash can, don't sit here and just cut like one swipe down the middle of the room, roll it up and take it away. This is 13 feet wide, okay, 13 by 13. So let's cut it like, and say like 4 strips. And then as we roll up those 4 strips, we're going to wrap it with duct tape to keep it really tight. And that way it's easy to take out to the trash. It's easily manageable by 1 or 2 people, and it's just easy to dispose of. It's just a much easier way to do it if you think ahead. Okay, now we're going to start rolling up the carpet, okay, getting it the heck out of here. Now, if you are doing this with the carpet, it's good now to add in your leather gloves. I'm talking leather gloves, all right, not just some little cloth things, because the tack strips, it's not so much the staples that may be holding the padding down, it's those tack strips. They got nails sticking straight up, and sometimes they're rusty, okay? So you're gonna need a glove that can handle it, like for reals, unless you just like getting tetanus. Okay, and when you're doing this, try to get the padding as much as you can at the same time. The carpet's all up and there's two things left to do. First, get rid of the tack strip, and second, get rid of the remaining padding and staples and or glue. So like I said, let's start with the tack strip. Tack strip is fairly basic to get up. It's just nailed here and there. So get yourself a flat crowbar. The trim crowbars will work okay here as well, and a hammer, and just start. Like I was saying before, a lot of times these tack strips will have rusty nails, and here's a good example of a little part that had gotten damp for whatever reason, and it's just full of rusty stuff. Okay, now that the tack strip is gone, we have to get rid of the remaining padding. Okay, now depending on how it was attached, whether it was stapled or glued, you got to address that. We can't have any of these little spots of padding here. It's going to mess up the laminate floor. Okay, so we got to get rid of all of it. Now to help us with this, I have a floor scraper. Okay, this can be gotten at the flooring department of most hardware stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, that kind of stuff. And also, I will see if Amazon has this. But it's just a big metal handle with a big metal blade. Okay. And it's going to help speed this up. This one's been stapled down, so we may still have to address some of that. Might still have to pull out some by hand, might have to hammer some stuff back down. But the floor needs to be clean and smooth. So let's get to it. Now I mentioned about sealing the floors so that moisture and stuff wouldn't come through. Even though there is a barrier pad on the bottom of this flooring, it is in pieces, so it's not 100% sealed between planks. So I just went to the local Lowe's and got some mist-tinted paint. And no, I did not purposely get the original Joker's colors, the green and the purple. But the green was in a gallon and I did it, and then I ran out. And I wanted to get some more over here because there was some damage to the floor and a little bit of molding. I wanted to make sure I hit that like really, really good. So I came back and got a quart. That's just what it was. And over here, we had that hole in the floor, which I took the patch up, fixed the joists because they were not properly repaired, and then rebuilt up a subfloor with 2x4s and 2x6s. Because this is there's a subfloor, then there's an old hardwood flooring here on top of that. And that came out pretty close, but not 100%. So we're going to do a little bit of floor leveling. There's a number of floor leveling products out there you can buy at your whatever store you get your flooring from, right there in that flooring department, whether it's a dedicated flooring store or a Lowe's or Home Depot. And they're generally a dry powder you mix with water and then you spread out to help level out a low spot. Okay, now this is something that a lot of y'all could probably use because there's a lot of floors out there that got a bad spot in them. Even if it is a concrete slab, there might be a low dip that needs to be filled in. Now, if you are working on concrete, I would probably recommend one of those floor leveling products, first of all, because they're generally like an epoxy-based or a Portland-based product, very much like a thin set, and they adhere and work very well with that. But here with this wood subfloor, you have a couple more options that work really well. And with this patch, they need kind of a small patch. I just need to kind of feather out the lips where they go together. I'm going to use this rock hard water putty. It's something I've used for patches for so many years before. It's pretty easy to work with, dries really hard and fairly quickly. All right, here we go. I've got it mixed up and I got a nice consistency. I got mine fairly thick, but still workable. You can definitely mix it a bit thinner than that to make it kind of like lay and kind of self-level itself. I wasn't really going for that over here. I wanted a little bit thicker. But let's go ahead and stick it on the floor, kind of feather out this patch and then get started. Okay, for those of you who are wondering what this thing I'm on, I call it my flooring creeper. My knees and back just can't take kneeling down on floors anymore. So this is what I use when I have to work on flooring. I'll have a video top right of the screen pop it up, show you guys how I built it. Okay, it's finally time to start laying the flooring down. I mean, by golly, it's time. Okay, well, first of all, you're thinking, wait, which way do I lay it? There's a way, is there like a rule? Okay, there's not a rule, okay? Now there is a guide, sure, a rule of thumb, if you will. If the room is very rectangular, especially like hallways, which are very, very rectangular, very long, then you're gonna go along the long ways, okay? That's typically how you're gonna lay wood plank. Now, if the room is like almost squarish, you know, or exactly square like this room here, then there is no rule on that. And the flooring in the kitchen runs that way. So if you ask me, I would run opposite of the flooring in the kitchen because these are two different wood floors, okay? Kind of make them adjacent to each other, make them stand out a little bit more. Now the owner, and then, like this is totally like up to you, wants to go with the traditional way. This is going to be one of the dominant walls of the house, of this room, and so we are going to lay it this way, so it's going to go the same direction as the kitchen. Okay, but I'm not going to exactly start on this wall here per se, because it has a floor heater, and it kind of really breaks up, you know, that first row of flooring, because it does sit on the baseboard and it sits further out, and we have to cut around that. All right, so we're going to go with the wall directly across from it. Okay, and this wall here does have a doorway over here, but it's mostly unbroken. So we're going to use this as our first wall. Now some people are like, well, I've heard people at flooring stores say you should measure off of that, snap chalk lines, measure off the adjacent wall, snap chalk lines, get a perfect square so you can square the flooring out like perfectly with the room, and then start laying from there. And I'm like, I don't do that at all. Now everyone's going to have their own different opinion on this. I'm sure we're going to get people in the comments that go after me on this. But here's the thing. No house is perfectly square, okay? Number one, or perfectly level. I've had people, customers, like when I did like backsplash and stuff like that, try to run around with a level and run behind me. I'm like, hey, you know, go away. You know, you want to use a level, if you want to install it, that's okay, but go away. The point being is whether it's a countertop or flooring, neither the countertop in the house should be so unlevel that your eyes can even see it. And neither the room should be so out of square that your eyes can actually see it. What humans' eyes will much quicker catch on is a straight line versus being perfectly level or perfectly square, okay? So on a countertop, I follow that countertop with my bottom row of tiles and work off of that. I don't care if it's perfectly level or not, because your eyes are going to follow that straight line on the countertop, and they'll follow that first straight row of tiles going with it, okay? And if you're trying to level the wall out separately from the countertop, your eyes are going to pick up on it like that. Same thing with the flooring, okay? We've got a big straight wall right here, nothing breaking it up. Your eyes are going to follow that straight line. So that's a straight line I'm going to focus on. I don't care if it's square to this wall over here. I don't care. Your eyes are going to catch this. This is what your eyes are going to see. So I'm just going to run my first row of flooring right along with this wall and keep it parallel with this wall. And the first row is the most important one because it's got to be straight and spot on, or you're going to get all janky before the end of it. All right, let's take a first look at our flooring plank, okay? It's a nice wide plank, and it is extremely thick. I mean, look at that compared to my pinky finger there. I mean, look how thick that is. That's why one of the big reasons I really like this flooring is just so solid. And there are little rubber, so I can get you to see it, little rubber flanges that run up on the edges here, which help lock that in and help to keep, if something gets spilled on it, from it wiggling itself through in between the planks and underneath and stuff like that and causing problems. So it helps to really seal these boards up. Okay, now the smaller lip I'm going to put towards the wall, okay? And the bigger lip we're going to be facing out, and it's going to be the easiest to stick the next one into and lock it down. And typically the first one you could just set right down. No worries. But of course it's not going to be that easy for us here. And also I typically like to run left to right. It's kind of the way these things are designed to snap in a little easier. Plus it's just seems like the natural way of doing things. You read left to right. But I've got a doorway on the far left of this wall. So the first row we're going to run right to left. And then we'll go back the other direction, okay? And I've got an open doorway kind of here, which I'm going to have to notch out for. Okay, now we're going to get ready to snap in the next board to the side of it. And to help us out here, we're going to need a tapping block, okay? This is actually a pretty needed thing in the project. Now you can buy this one on Amazon or HautoLink. This is made basically just like your cutting boards, same kind of material, just turned into a big, nice big block. Or you can use a cut-off piece of 2x4, which cut-off piece of 2x4 is probably worth like $50. So maybe you want to order this. Yeah. You guys will understand that if you're watching this video in 2021. Okay. So now this flooring right here specifically is a little bit easier than a lot of the other ones I've run across for snapping them in the sides, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to line them up so that we make sure that the flooring is straight, right, like this way. Has that straight edge and isn't doing like this or like that kind of thing. You know, we're very straight, we're lined up, and sometimes you can do it by hand. And we're just going to snap it in. You'll hear that plastic flap kind of click in. Okay, not always by hand. Use a little tapping block and kind of help out. All right, now an important thing to know is that you want whatever you're going up against, whether it's the wall or the baseboard or the door jamb, you're going up against it, you want at least an 1/8 inch, if not closer to 3/16 inch of a gap all the way around, okay? That's going to help with any kind of expansion or contraction this floor is going to happen. That way, when it does expand, it doesn't buckle. Okay, it's terrible when it happens. Okay, here we are going to measure our cutoff piece here, and we want to add in a little extra gap there at the end. So even though this measures 15 and 3/16, you know, and that's from wall to edge of flooring, I'm going to cut this one at 15. And so we don't mix things up, I'm laying the piece I'm about to cut the same direction as the rest of the flooring, so it's not spun the other way. Then I'm going to measure 15 on it, starting at the edge of the flooring, not at the edge of the tongue here. And we're going to measure 15, mark it, and there we go. And the piece that we cut off, don't throw that away, bring that back in, because this is actually going to start our next row over there. Now what we want to do with each row is to stagger the seams, okay? So here's the seam right here, and so put it right in the middle of this board. Here's the end of this seam here, and the next seam won't be up to here. That's perfect. Now of course I made a mistake, and I'm okay with pointing that out because everyone does it. But when I cut this board, I was running right to left. And normally you can take that cut off piece and start the next row. But I switched from running right to left to the more proper left to right. And now I don't have a ton of groove over here on my open end. It's been square cut off. So I may be able to use this, like say, at the far end over there, but not as a starter piece. So let's pop that back off and just set it to the side. Okay? So I'm gonna grab another piece here, and one other full length, why not? It works. And we're just going to do this right over again. Now, what I was about to say before I realized I made a mistake is that most laminates will have you leave a little gap between the two boards here. Okay, on the smallest seam. You'll put the next board in, lock it down flat, and then go over on the side and tap it in to make these two overlap and snap. This one here is a little bit different, okay? It doesn't have that kind of a lock. you actually need to set this one square in. Okay, I got a good grab. And we're kind of snug over here. And then we're gonna go straight down. Okay, now this is where that plastic flap's gonna lock in. And this is gonna be easier than the first way. And we're locked. So there's no setting it down, going to the far side, tapping it in, kind of holding this down so it doesn't lift up, and then making them lock. You just put it straight over and snap in place. And I'm ready for the next one. So I actually really like this way better. Maybe see you got a piece down and you've got it pushed up tight here on the side seam, and you're just wiggling and wiggling and wiggling, and it's just not wanting to drop down. And you know there's maybe a little gap up here or something like that, but you're just having troubles getting it to lock in. You take your tapping block, and I don't even, hit it with the hammer like this. I just kind of tap it with the top and just kind of give it a little tap. A little tap, tap, tap. Sometimes that's enough just to wiggle it into place so that she'll drop right down for you. Okay, so what if you have a mistake here? What if you have a problem? Say like you're coming down the road towards the final wall, and then you're gonna lay one piece, and the next piece to be cut is only gonna be like not even 2 inches long, okay? You don't want that. So you're like, crap, how do you fix that? Well, you need to take the row up and make the first one, change the length of the first one, probably make it longer. Okay, but you don't want to just take, say, this plank and then lift it up and separate the short seam here, because with that flap thing in there locked in, you'll just crack it and end up throwing these pieces away. So we want to take the entire row off together. So you want to very carefully, okay, start to lift it up. There we go. I already cracked the edge a little bit with my thumb. Okay, there we go. So now we have the whole row off together as one row, and then we're going to wiggle these two apart and just slide them. There we go. And that's how you separate them without breaking them, so you can go back and fix the row and redo it. Okay, you can see we're almost done here, so that's great. You can see I've only got one more row to go, and your next question will probably be, is how do you snap these in if you don't have room to put your tapping block here at the very end on the small seam, or even, along the long seam on the very last row. That's where you take yourself a crowbar. You can still use your trim ones too, and you would put it like right here against, whether it's the baseboard or the wall, and your flooring plank. And then your flooring plank is mostly put in place. Let's say you need to wiggle it, snap it in. You're just going to if you just kind of take your crowbar and push it, lift it up a little bit, push it to the side. It's really enough, as long as you don't go crazy, and you can just use that force to push it and snap right into place. Whether it's on this side or if it's on this side and you're trying to push it in, really works good that way. Now I did say I would kind of talk to you guys about how to cut the laminate floor in a couple different ways, and I said in the beginning of this video, if you have a table saw and a miter saw, you're golden. And actually, because flooring, a lot of the cuts don't have to be 100% perfect, you are leaving that 3/16 of inch gap between it and the wall. Using a table saw that just has a miter slide on it. I've been using this one saw for the whole project. It's been doing great for me. And where the table saw is really going to shine is that last row you got to put in. And actually, up to this point, I could have gotten away with probably just the miter saw or just a skill saw, just chopping off the ends. But I got to rip every board because the chances of this laying down and being the proper gap between the flooring and the wall and the last row, I mean, it happens, right? But people also win the lottery too, right? So it doesn't happen real often. This project does not require advanced table saw skills. It's very straight, you know, rip cuts and stuff like that. Now, if you are a beginner on table saws, and maybe you're borrowing one and hardly know what you're doing, I do have a video kind of give you the basics on how to use a table saw, popping up top right of your screen. Now, what if you wanted to use the skill saw instead? So let's say you have a skill saw, you don't have a table saw or access to a table saw, and you're like, I'm not going out and spending $300-400 on a table saw for the one flooring project, okay? The skill saw can also be used pretty well with this project. You just got to set the depth of the blade, okay? So you're going to lift up the deck plate, put the blade on the side, let it drop down so that it's cutting just the depth of your flooring, and then set down, I would say like a piece of plywood, but that's very expensive these days. Maybe you have a piece laying around, maybe you don't. Even by this point, if you've just been cutting off edges, maybe you have enough scrap pieces of flooring that you can lay down as a base, and then put your flooring that you're actually cutting on top. That way you can kind of cut through, and it's going to nick whatever you're cutting, you know, below it. So have something down that's going to be stable, not, you know, moving around on you, but yet you can still cut through. Now at this point, as soon as you finish that last row, get it all in place, looking good, the only thing left is to put the baseboard back on or to install your quarter round. And in some situations, well, actually probably in a lot of situations, you might need to put binder strips in between the rooms and the doorways where the two floors, different floors meet up. But we're really done here. So I hope this video helps you guys out. You can see that this is a very feasible DIY project, you know, even for the weekend. And now it's probably gonna be a long, hard weekend to get this done and put it all back together. But still, you know, and that depends if you gotta fix your floor, the subfloor or not. So hopefully you don't. Hopefully this project goes really smooth for you guys. Please share this video. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, check out our website, and there's another video for you guys as well. You guys have a great one.